Some miracles arrive wrapped in barbed wire and desperation, hanging by a thread in Montana snow, and sometimes they bark. Highway 89 sliced through the frozen mountains like a scar, and Deputy Sheriff Ethan Brooks gripped the steering wheel tighter as another gust rocked his pickup. In the back seat, his 7-year-old daughter Emma, silent for 10 months since the fire that killed her mother, suddenly grabbed his arm with strength that made him swerve. Her mouth moved. Nothing. Then, hoarse and broken, "Mama." Ethan's heart stopped. 10 months. 300 days of silence. And now, she pointed through the frosted window, finger trembling. He slammed the brakes. The truck skidded 40 feet on ice. Through the glass, he saw it, a German shepherd leaping desperately at a cottonwood tree. Higher up, a puppy hung suspended in a wire noose, dying. And the dog. God, he knew that dog. Echo. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching. From now, let's continue with the story. The world had stopped making sense 10 months ago. The night Sarah Brooks burned alive in their bedroom while Ethan sat at his desk at the sheriff's station, finishing paperwork that could have waited until morning. The fire investigators called it electrical faulty wiring in the old farmhouse they'd been meaning to renovate but couldn't afford. Sarah had been trapped. Emma, sleeping in the adjacent room, suffered spinal compression when part of the ceiling collapsed. The doctor said she'd never walk again. That was bearable. Somehow. What broke Ethan wasn't the wheelchair. It was the silence that followed. Emma had watched her mother die. Through the smoke, through the flames, through the desperate 17 minutes before firefighters arrived. She'd screamed until her voice gave out. They said. And then she never spoke again. Not at the funeral, not during the endless medical appointments. Not when the medical bills started arriving like accusatory letters from a vengeful God on $178,000 for Sarah's emergency treatment before she died. Another $47,000 for Emma's spinal surgery. Physical therapy, $200 monthly. And insurance covered barely half. Ethan worked doubles, triples when he could get them. Deputy sheriff's salary in Montana, $42,000 annually. He took a night job at the Gas and Go, pumping fuel and restocking shelves, while Emma slept at their neighbor Dorothy's house. The mortgage fell behind. 3 months now. The bank's foreclosure notice sat on his kitchen table, 30 days to pay $8,400 or lose everything. He'd been contemplating which possessions would fit in the truck when they became homeless. Today was supposed to be different. Dr. Helena Voss in Great Falls specialized in trauma-induced selective mutism. She'd agreed to see Emma pro bono after the sheriff's department made calls, pulled strings, begged favors. Maybe she could unlock whatever had frozen inside his daughter's throat. Maybe she could bring back the little girl who used to narrate her entire day, who sang made-up songs about caterpillars, who'd told him every single night, "I love you, Daddy, all the way to the moon." But the blizzard forecast had moved up. Radio dispatch crackled, "All vehicles, Route 89 closure in 28 minutes, repeat 28 minutes." They weren't going to make the appointment. Another $450 gone. The deposit was non-refundable. Ethan had been calculating whether he could skip his blood pressure medication for 2 months to cover it when Emma grabbed his arm. and spoke, "Mama." Now Ethan stood in 2 feet of snow, pushing Emma's wheelchair toward a nightmare he couldn't process. Echo, his military K-9 partner from Afghanistan. The German shepherd who'd saved his life by taking shrapnel meant for him, who'd disappeared 2 months ago after her elderly owner died, was here. Impossible. But there she was, 75 pounds of black and tan loyalty, leaping 4 feet high again and again, clawing at ancient bark, howling with a sound that bypassed his ears and stabbed directly into his soul. Above her, 15 feet up, a puppy swung in a steel cable noose, body limp, dying in the Montana cold. The snow fell harder now, each flake a tiny countdown to disaster. Ethan checked his watch. 26 minutes until the blizzard hit full force. 26 minutes until Route 89 became a death trap of zero visibility and black ice. Behind him, the truck's hazard lights blinked orange against the gathering white, a beacon that felt more like a funeral marker than a safety measure. Emma's wheelchair lurched as he pushed it through the deep snow. Every yard a battle against powder that wanted to swallow the small wheels whole. His daughter's hands gripped the armrests so tightly her knuckles had gone bloodless. She was staring at Echo with an intensity he hadn't seen since before the fire, the look of someone witnessing something sacred and terrible all at once. "Daddy." The word came out rusty, unpracticed. Her voice had changed in 10 months, deeper, damaged. "She's crying." Echo was 50 yards away now, and Ethan could see the details that made his chest constrict. The dog's paws were bleeding, leaving crimson stamps in the snow with each desperate leap. Her claws had torn strips of bark from the cottonwood, exposing pale wood underneath like wounds in the tree's flesh. But she wasn't barking. That's what unsettled him most. Military K-9s were trained not to bark on missions. Silence meant stealth, meant survival. Instead, Echo was making a sound he'd only heard once before. In Kandahar, when their unit's bomb detection dog had found her handler dead in a collapsed building. A keening, a mourning, the sound a wolf makes when the pack is broken. The puppy above barely moved. 4 months old, maybe. German shepherd coloring, but with a distinctive white patch on its chest. The wire noose had cut deep enough that blood had frozen in dark streaks down the puppy's neck. Its eyes were half closed, glassy. Hypothermia was killing it as surely as strangulation. At -15 Celsius, a puppy this young had maybe 8 minutes left, maybe less. Ethan pulled out his binoculars, standard equipment, always in his glove box and focused on the wire. Aircraft-grade steel cable, 3/16-inch diameter. Someone had tied it with a professional knot, a trucker's hitch modified for permanent suspension. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a trap gone wrong. Someone had hung this puppy deliberately, positioned it exactly where it would be visible from the highway, exactly high enough that rescue would be nearly impossible. He panned the binoculars across the landscape. There, tire tracks, partially filled with new snow but still visible. Wide wheelbase, dual rear tires, an F-350 or larger. The tracks led from the tree toward the old Thorn warehouse, a concrete monstrosity that had been shuttered 5 years ago when Marcus Thorn, the former fire chief, had retired and closed his agricultural supply business. The warehouse sat 400 yards west, squat and gray against the white horizon. Marcus Thorn. Ethan's jaw tightened at the name. Thorne had been fire chief the night Sarah died. He'd been one of the men who'd pulled Emma from the rubble, who'd stood at Sarah's funeral with tears in his weathered eyes, who'd gripped Ethan's shoulder and said, "Some fires, son, they take more than they burn." At the time, Ethan had thought it was comfort. Now, looking at those tracks, at the deliberate cruelty of a puppy hung to die, he wondered what else Thorne's words had meant. 40 yards now. Echo suddenly stopped jumping and turned toward them. Her ears pricked forward, nostrils flaring, scent recognition. Then her whole body went rigid, not aggressive, but the opposite, submissive, hopeful. The stance of a soldier seeing their commanding officer after years apart. Echo. Ethan's voice cracked. "Girl, is that really you?" The German shepherd took 3 tentative steps toward them, then stopped. Her tail gave one uncertain wag. In the military, handlers didn't just work with their canines, they bonded with them, slept beside them, learned to read every flick of ear and twitch of tail like a language more honest than words. Ethan had spent 18 months in Afghanistan with Echo. She'd alerted him to an IED that would have killed 6 men. She'd taken shrapnel in her left hind leg when a secondary device detonated shrapnel meant for Ethan's femoral artery. After discharge, she'd been adopted by Walter Green, an elderly veteran who'd worked as a night watchman at Thorne's warehouse. Walter had died 2 months ago. Heart attack. The coroner said. Ethan had searched for Echo for 3 weeks, posted flyers, drove hundreds of miles checking shelters. Nothing. He'd assumed she'd died in the wilderness, that grief and winter had taken her, but here she was, 20 yards. Echo broke into a run, but not toward Ethan, toward Emma. She stopped 5 feet from the wheelchair and lowered herself to the ground, belly in the snow, in the universal canine gesture of non-threat. Then she crawled forward, inch by inch, until her scarred head rested on Emma's lap. Emma's hand moved, slowly, as if she'd forgotten how hands worked. She touched Echo's fur. The dog whimpered not in pain, but in recognition of pain shared. Emma's fingers, which hadn't voluntarily touched anything beyond Mr. Snuggles in 10 months, buried themselves in Echo's thick coat. "Good, Mama," Emma whispered. The words were clearer now, gaining strength. Don't give up." At the word Mama, Echo's ears flattened and she pulled away from Emma, running back to the tree. She resumed jumping, clawing, that awful keening rising again. Ethan understood then. This wasn't Echo's puppy, it couldn't be. The timeline didn't work. Echo had been missing only 2 months, but she was trying to save it with the ferocity of a mother. Or the loyalty of something else. Something deeper. 10 yards from the tree, Ethan could see the puppy's chest rising and falling, barely. 3 breaths. Wait. 4. Still alive, but fading like a candle in wind. He assessed the climb. The cottonwood was massive, 60 feet tall, trunk 4 feet in diameter. The lowest branch was 12 feet up, the one holding the puppy at 15. The bark was frozen, treacherous. His right shoulder, the one that had been dislocated twice, once in Afghanistan and once 3 years ago tackling a domestic violence suspect, throbbed at the thought of the climb. But 8 minutes. The puppy had 8 minutes. Maximum Ethan turned to Emma. "Baby, I need you to stay right here. Don't move." "Okay. Keep the heater running in the truck if you get too cold." Emma shook her head violently. Her hands gripped the wheelchair arms. "No, not like Mama. I'm not leaving you." The words hit him like a physical blow. Not leaving you. Because she'd been forced to leave Sarah? Because she'd been trapped in her room while her mother burned in the next one? Separated by a door she couldn't reach, couldn't open, couldn't okay. His voice was thick. "Okay, sweetheart. You stay right here. I'll be fast. I promise." He stripped off his heavy coat. He needed mobility more than warmth and kept only his leather gloves. From his utility belt, he pulled his multi-tool, a Leatherman with a 3-inch blade. He also grabbed his service rope, 25 feet of braided nylon that he kept for vehicle extractions. Not enough to reach the ground from the branch, but maybe enough to secure himself if he started to fall. The first jump got him 8 feet up the trunk. His boots scrabbled against frozen bark. Finding no purchase, he dropped, tried again. This time he grabbed a rough patch and held on, muscles screaming as he pulled himself higher. 10 feet, 12 feet. His fingers were already going numb despite the gloves. 14 feet. The first branch. He swung his leg over it and pulled himself up. The branch groaned but held. From here he could see the puppy clearly. A female. The wire had cut through fur and skin, embedding itself in the tissue beneath. Her eyes were closed now. Her breathing had stopped. No. Wait. One shallow breath. Another. She was still fighting. Ethan stood carefully on the branch and reached for the one above. The puppy was suspended from a smaller branch extending from this larger one. He'd have to lean out, reach across empty space, and somehow cut the wire or the rope without dropping the puppy 15 feet onto frozen ground. Below, Emma was crying. Not sobbing, she'd forgotten how to sob, had forgotten how to make any sound louder than a whisper for 10 months, but tears were streaming down her face. Echo stood beside the wheelchair, looking up at Ethan, then at the puppy, then back at Ethan, waiting, trusting. Ethan pulled out his multi-tool and opened the blade. He reached out too far. Balance shifting and grabbed the branch the puppy hung from. It was thinner than he'd hoped. Maybe 2 inches in diameter. Old wood, brittle from cold. It cracked under his weight. "Daddy!" Emma's scream was the loudest sound she'd made in 10 months. The branch snapped. Ethan lunged, caught the wire in one hand, felt it slice through his glove into his palm, and grabbed the puppy's body with the other. The sudden weight pulled him forward. He was falling. 15 feet of empty air beneath him, holding a dying puppy and a handful of razor-sharp wire. Then his rope, tied around his waist and looped over the main branch, caught. The jolt nearly tore his arm from its socket. His shoulder, the bad one screamed. But he held on. To the wire. To the puppy. To everything he hadn't been able to hold on to 10 months ago. Hand over hand, ignoring the pain, ignoring the blood running down his arm. He pulled himself back up, braced himself against the trunk. Used the knife to saw at the wire where it connected to what remained of the broken branch. 1 strand, 2 strands, 3. The wire parted. The puppy fell into his arms. She wasn't breathing. Ethan didn't think. He did what the army had trained him to do. Tucked the puppy inside his shirt against his chest. Used his body heat. Rubbed her ribs vigorously. Come on, come on, little one. Breathe, breathe. Nothing. He climbed down one-handed, cradling her, the descent taking forever and no time at all. His boots hit snow. Echo was there immediately, sniffing frantically. Emma was reaching out from her wheelchair. Give her to me." Emma's voice was steady now, almost normal. I'll warm her." Ethan placed the puppy on Emma's lap. His daughter unzipped her own coat and tucked the small body against her chest, zipped the coat back up so only the puppy's head was visible. Emma's arms wrapped around the bundle, her whole body curved protectively over it. "Breathe," Emma whispered to the puppy. "Please breathe. I know what it's like. When everything's dark and you can't make sounds anymore. But you have to try. You have to." The puppy coughed. A wet, rattling sound. Then gasped. Her eyes opened brown. Confused. Alive. Emma burst into tears. Real sobs now. 10 months of silence breaking like a dam. "You're alive. You're alive. Oh, God, you're alive." Echo pushed her head between Emma and the puppy, licking both of them, tail wagging so hard her whole back end shook. The puppy turned her head and licked Echo's nose weakly. Not fear. Recognition. Whatever these two were to each other, it was mutual. Ethan sank to his knees in the snow, cradling his bleeding hand, shoulder on fire, and watched his daughter hold a dying thing back to life with nothing but warmth and will. Emma was talking non-stop now, words flooding out like she was making up for lost time. "We'll call you Hope. That's your name. Hope. Because you didn't give up. Because Mama always said hope is the thing with feathers. But maybe sometimes it has fur. Maybe sometimes hope is just holding on when letting go would be easier." But Ethan wasn't listening to Emma anymore. He was looking at Echo, at the blood on her paws, at the scars on her body that hadn't been there 2 months ago, fresh scars, the kind you got from chains or cages, at the way she kept looking toward the Thorn warehouse, hackles rising, and he was looking at the wire still clutched in his gloved hand. Aircraft cable, military grade, the same kind used in canine training facilities. Walter Green had worked at Thorn's warehouse. Walter was dead, supposedly of a heart attack. Echo had disappeared right after. And now here she was, scarred and desperate, trying to save a puppy that had been hung with military equipment 400 yards from Thorn's property. Ethan's radio crackled. "All units, blizzard arrival in 15 minutes. Route 89 is closed. Repeat, closed." He looked at his daughter, talking to Hope, smiling for the first time in 10 months. He looked at Echo, who was staring at the warehouse with the intensity of a soldier who'd found the enemy position. He looked at his bleeding hand and thought about his bleeding bank account and his foreclosed house and his dead wife and his daughter who'd just learned to speak again because a dog had asked for help. "Emma," his voice was quiet. "We need to go. The storm," Echo barked, a single, sharp bark that made both Ethan and Emma freeze. It was a trained alert, the bark that meant, "Found something. Come look. Danger here." Echo took 5 steps toward the warehouse, looked back at Ethan, and barked again. Then she ran 10 yards, stopped, looked back. The universal canine signal. Follow me." Emma's eyes were wide. "Daddy, she knows something." "We need to get you to safety. Baby, the blizzard." "Mama died because nobody came fast enough." Emma's voice was small but certain. What if someone else needs help? What if there are more hopes?" Ethan looked at the warehouse, at the tire tracks, at Echo, who had saved his life in Afghanistan and was now begging him for help, at his daughter, who had been silent for 10 months and was now asking him to be the kind of man who showed up when others needed saving. He pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Brooks, investigating possible disturbance at Old Thorn Warehouse, Route 89 mile marker 47. The radio crackled. "Brooks, blizzard hits in 13 minutes. Return to vehicle immediately." "Copy that. But I've got a credible alert from a trained K9 requesting backup when storm clears. Brooks, that warehouse has been closed for 5 years. There's nothing—" He switched off the radio, looked at Emma. "If I say run, you put this wheelchair in gear and you head for the truck. You lock the doors. You call 911. Understand?" Emma nodded. "But you're not going to say run, are you?" Ethan wished he could lie to her. Instead, he began pushing her wheelchair through the snow, toward the warehouse, following a German shepherd who wouldn't stop looking back to make sure they were coming, following the blood trail in the snow from Echo's wounded paws, following a mystery that had started 2 months ago with a dead watchman and a missing dog, and was about to reveal something that would make him wish he'd driven past, wish he'd never stopped, wish he'd never taught his daughter that sometimes the right thing to do is the thing that destroys you. Behind them, hope whimpered from inside Emma's coat. Still alive, still fighting, still hoping. The warehouse door was open. Just an inch. But that inch was enough to show that someone had been here. Recently, and they'd left in a hurry. Echo slipped through the opening. Ethan took a breath, pushed Emma's wheelchair forward, and followed the dog into the dark. The warehouse swallowed them whole. Ethan's eyes struggled to adjust from the white glare of snow to the gray dimness inside. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees outside had been bitter, but at least the winter sun provided some warmth. Here, in this concrete tomb, the cold felt malicious, intentional, like something that had been cultivating itself in darkness for years. The first room was exactly what he'd expected from an abandoned agricultural supply warehouse, rusted equipment skeletal in the shadows. Seed spreaders with their hoppers gaping like hungry mouths. Plows tilted at angles that suggested they'd been dropped rather than stored. Dust coated everything in a thick gray fur except for one detail that made Ethan's hand move instinctively toward his service weapon. A path. Through the dust. Recent. Multiple footprints. Size 11 or 12 boots, leading deeper into the warehouse. And something else, paw prints. Smaller than Echo's. Scattered and frantic. The marks of an animal that had been running or trying to escape. Emma's wheelchair squeaked as he pushed it forward. The sound echoed in the vast space, multiplying until it seemed like a dozen wheelchairs were moving through the darkness. Hope stirred inside Emma's coat, letting out a soft whimper. Emma's hand immediately went to the puppy, soothing. "Shh, baby. We're okay. We're okay." but her voice trembled. She didn't believe it any more than Ethan did. Echo moved ahead of them, nose to the ground, following a scent trail invisible to human senses. She paused at a doorway, hackles rising, then continued down a hallway that stretched into deeper darkness. The fluorescent lights overhead were dead, but Ethan could see they were relatively new, installed within the past few years. Someone had been maintaining this supposedly abandoned building. His flashlight beam cut through the dark, revealing doors on either side of the corridor. Storage rooms, probably. He tried the first door, locked, the second open, revealing nothing but empty shelves and more dust. The third, Echo stopped, stood rigid, stared at a door 15 feet ahead on the left. Her posture shifted into something Ethan recognized from Afghanistan, the alert stance. Target acquired, danger present. The door had a new padlock. Heavy duty, master lock, commercial grade, the kind you used when you really didn't want someone getting in or out. From behind the door, a sound, muffled, could have been wind in the building's bones, could have been pipes settling, could have been, "Hello, is someone there?" A child's voice, thin, terrified, unmistakably human. Ethan's blood turned to ice water. "Emma, stay back." But Emma had already rolled her wheelchair forward, pressing close to the door. "We're here. We're here to help. Are you okay? Please." Another voice, younger than the first. "Please, he's coming back. He said if we made noise, he'd—" The voice cut off into sobs. Ethan grabbed the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. His injured shoulder screamed as he hefted it, but adrenaline was a better painkiller than anything in his truck's first aid kit. He swung the extinguisher at the padlock once, twice, 3 times. The metal shrieked, but held. 4th hit the hasp bent. 5th, it broke. The door swung open. The smell hit him first. Unwashed bodies. Human waste. Fear, actual fear, with its own scent, acrid and sharp. Then his flashlight beam revealed the nightmare. 6 metal cages, dog kennels, the largest kind, meant for German shepherds or Rottweilers. But these didn't contain dogs. 4 were empty, their doors hanging open as if whatever had been inside had been removed in a hurry. 2 were occupied. Cage 1, a boy, maybe 6 years old, curled in the fetal position. His clothes were filthy, hanging off a frame that had clearly lost weight. His hair was matted, and even in the flashlight beam, Ethan could see lice moving. The boy's eyes were enormous in his thin face, pupils dilated with terror. Cage 2, a girl, approximately 8, sitting with her back against the wire mesh. She had a black eye, fresh enough that the bruising was still vivid purple. Her lip was split, but her eyes were defiant. When Ethan's light hit her, she didn't flinch. She stared back. "Are you really police?" Her voice was hoarse, as if she'd done a lot of screaming and given up. Ethan's badge was already out. "Deputy Sheriff Ethan Brooks. You're safe now. I'm getting you out." His hand shook as he examined the cage locks, combination locks, 3 digits each, thousands of possible combinations. "Do you know the codes?" The girl shook her head. He never told us. Just opened them when he brought food, or when he... She stopped, looked at the boy, who had started rocking, arms wrapped around his knees. Emma had rolled up beside Ethan. She reached through the cage wire toward the girl, her small hand extended. "I'm Emma. What's your name?" "Sophie." The girl didn't take Emma's hand, didn't trust it yet. "Sophie Chen. I've been here 5 weeks. Tyler?" She gestured to the boy. "He's been here longer. 3 weeks. Maybe. He doesn't talk much anymore." 5 weeks. 3 weeks. Children. Caged like animals. And Ethan had driven past this warehouse a dozen times on patrol. Had never suspected. Had never known. He turned to his radio, then remembered he'd shut it off. Turned it back on. "Dispatch. This is Brooks. Code 1000 at Thorn Warehouse. Repeat. Code 1000. Code 1000. Officer needs immediate assistance. The nuclear option. Every available unit would respond." Static. The storm was interfering. "Brooks. Can't. Repeat. Blizzard." "Dispatch. I have 2 minors in custody. Possible kidnapping. Possible human trafficking. I need..." The radio died completely. The storm had killed the signal. Sophie watched him struggle with the radio, and something in her expression broke. "He said nobody would come. He said nobody cares about kids like us. He said..." Her voice cracked. "He said we're being relocated to families who actually want us. That our real parents were glad to get rid of us. That's not true." Emma's voice was fierce. "That's not true. People care. People are looking for you. People..." She stopped, swallowed. "My mama cared. She cared so much she died for me. And my daddy cares. He's going to save you. That's what he does. He saves people." "Does he?" The voice in Ethan's head was cruel, familiar. "Did you save Sarah? Did you even try?" He shoved the thought away, focused. The combination locks were 3-digit. He could shoot them. But ricochets in this concrete room could hit the children. He needed another way. "Sophie, did you see what he looked like? The man who locked you here? Old, gray beard, wears a hunting jacket, red and black, smells like cigarettes and..." She hesitated. "And dog food. Like he's been around animals a lot. Marcus Thorne. It had to be. Former fire chief, owner of this warehouse, and apparently a monster who caged children." Ethan moved to the wall, running his flashlight over it. There a pegboard, the kind used for tools. Empty hooks, but one had a small metal box hanging from it. He grabbed it, opened it. Inside a small notebook. He flipped through pages of numbers, dates, names that made his stomach turn. And on the last page combinations, 47 to 23, 15, 39, 12, 08. The first combination opened Sophie's cage. She crawled out, legs unsteady from weeks of confinement, and immediately went to Tyler's cage. "It's okay. It's okay. Tyler, we're leaving. We're going home." The second combination opened Tyler's cage. The boy didn't move. Sophie reached in, took his hand, and gently pulled. He came, but he was somewhere else. his eyes tracking things that weren't there. Emma had Hope out of her coat now, holding the puppy carefully. "Look, Tyler, this is Hope. She was hurt too, but she's going to be okay. And so are you." Tyler's eyes focused on the puppy. Just for a second. A flicker of something human. Ethan was about to lead them out when Echo barked sharp, insistent, and ran toward a door at the back of the room. A door Ethan hadn't noticed. It was partially hidden behind one of the empty cages. "Echo, we need to—" The dog barked again. The same alert bark from outside. "Found something. Come look." Ethan approached the door. It wasn't locked. He pushed it open. An office. Small. Desk. Filing cabinet. Corkboard on the wall. The corkboard made him want to vomit. Photographs. At least 15 children. Ages 5 to 12, each photo with a name, date, and status written beneath. Some photos had red X's through them. Some had check marks. Some had circles with dollar amounts. But it was the filing cabinet that destroyed him. He pulled open the top drawer, found folders organized alphabetically. His hands moved of their own accord to the B section. Brooks. The folder was thick. He opened it. Photographs of his family. Sarah at the vet clinic. Emma playing in their yard. Ethan himself, in uniform, leaving the sheriff's station. Someone had been watching them. For how long? A document. Typewritten. Subject Sarah Brooks, DVM, status threat level high. Subject discovered evidence of animal abuse during treatment of K9 unit, November 2022. Recommended action, neutralization. Neutralization, the clinical word for murder. Stapled behind it, incident report, March 15, 2023. S. Brooks neutralized via structural fire. 0147 hours. Complication, daughter present. Injured, but survived. Witness Dorothy Sullivan compensated. $5,000. Dorothy Sullivan. Their neighbor. The woman who'd held Emma at Sarah's funeral. The woman who'd brought casseroles and kind words and sympathy. She'd been paid $5,000 to help murder his wife. Ethan's hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped the folder. There was more. Emma's photo, recent, taken from across the street from their house, circled. Below, target acquisition, January 2024. High value. Father unstable, PTSD, financial distress, daughter disabled, traumatized, easy extraction. Estimated value, $25,000. They'd been planning to take Emma in 3 weeks. They were going to steal his daughter and sell her like livestock. Behind him, Emma's voice. "Daddy, what is that?" He tried to close the folder, but she'd already seen her photo, her mother's photo with the red X. "Daddy, what does neutralized mean?" He couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't. Sophie answered. Her voice flat with knowledge no 8-year-old should have. "It means killed. It means they killed your mom." Emma's face went white. Hope fell from her hands. Sophie caught the puppy just in time. Emma's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then, like a dam breaking, a scream, raw, primal. The scream she'd been holding inside for 10 months. The scream she'd swallowed the night she watched her mother burn. "They killed her. They killed Mama. She couldn't get enough air, hyperventilating, hands clutching at her chest. Ethan dropped to his knees, grabbed her shoulders. Emma, Emma, breathe, look at me. Breathe. But she was drowning in it, in the truth, in the betrayal. Dorothy was there. She helped. She helped them kill Mama, and then she brought us cookies. She hugged me at the funeral. A sound from the hallway. Footsteps. Heavy. Multiple people. Echo's growl was low, constant, the sound a wolf makes before it attacks. Ethan pulled his weapon. Sophie, Tyler, Emma behind the desk, now. They moved. Emma still sobbing but silent now, shock setting in. Sophie pulling Tyler, who was catatonic, hope whimpering in Sophie's arms. Echo positioned herself between the children and the door, teeth bared. The warehouse lights suddenly blazed on. Someone had found the breaker. Ethan squinted against the sudden glare. A voice from the hallway, familiar, tired, sad. Deputy Brooks, I had hoped you'd drive past. The blizzard should have kept you away. Marcus Thorne stepped into the doorway. He looked older than Ethan remembered. 70, maybe. His red and black hunting jacket was exactly as Sophie had described. In his hands, a Remington 700 hunting rifle. Behind him, 2 other men. One, Ethan recognized Jackson Wells, who ran the hardware store in town. The other was a stranger. Younger, maybe 30, with the cold eyes of someone who'd learned to stop feeling. You found my operation. Marcus's voice was quiet, almost apologetic. That's unfortunate. For all of us. Ethan's Glock was aimed at Marcus's center mass, but 3 against 1 with a rifle in the equation meant any shooting would end badly for everyone, especially the children behind him. His finger rested beside the trigger guard. Not on it. Not yet. Training screamed at him, create distance, find cover, protect civilians, call for backup. But backup was impossible in the blizzard. Cover was minimal. And the children were already in the line of fire. Put the rifle down. Marcus. Ethan's voice was steady despite the rage building in his chest like a pressure cooker about to explode. You're done. It's over. Marcus smiled, a sad, broken expression that looked more like a grimace. Done, son? I've been done for 15 years, ever since I watched my boy burn to death while I was saving someone else's family. He shifted the rifle slightly, not quite aiming at Ethan, but not pointing it away either. This is just the epilogue. Your son. Ethan kept his weapon trained on Marcus, but his peripheral vision tracked the other 2 men. Wells had pulled a pistol, looked like a Ruger, maybe a .357. The younger man was unarmed, but had the coiled stance of someone ready to move fast. Dylan, the forest fire at Devil's Ridge, 2008. You remember? Marcus's eyes lit up with something like gratitude, as if being remembered mattered more than the children in cages behind them. Everyone else forgot within a month. Tragedy gets replaced by the next tragedy, like a news cycle that never stops feeding. But I remember. Every second of every day. Behind Ethan, Emma had stopped crying. He could hear her breathing fast, shallow. Panic attack breathing. Sophie was whispering to her, something he couldn't make out. Tyler hadn't made a sound. Echo's growl was a constant rumble, a predator deciding whether to strike. Dylan died because I followed protocol. Marcus took a step into the room. Wells and the younger man flanked him, spreading out. Classic tactical formation: divide the target's attention, create multiple angles of attack. Fire Chief protocol: prioritize based on threat level and number of lives at risk. The Martin family had 5 people trapped on the West Ridge. Dylan had his scout troop on the East Ridge, 12 boys, 3 adults. But the West Ridge fire was rated catastrophic. East Ridge was supposed to be contained. It wasn't. Ethan had heard this story. Everyone in Montana had. The Devil's Ridge fire had killed 4 scouts, including Marcus's son. Investigation had blamed wind patterns, unexpected fuel loads, and bad luck. The wind shifted. 23 minutes. That's how long it took us to secure the Martins and get to East Ridge. 23 minutes. Marcus's voice cracked. I found Dylan behind a rock where he'd tried to hide from the smoke. His last words... He stopped, swallowed. He said, "Daddy, where were you?" Then he stopped breathing. In my arms. 8 years old. Emma made a sound, not a sob, something harder. My mama died, calling for me. I heard her through the fire. She said, "Emma, I love you." And then, nothing. Marcus turned his attention to Emma, and for a moment, something human flickered across his face. I know, child. I know exactly what that silence sounds like. It's the loudest sound in the world, isn't it? The moment someone stops calling your name. Don't. Ethan's voice was sharp as shattered glass. Don't you dare compare yourself to her. You killed her mother. You were going to take her. Sell her like... Save her. Marcus's interruption was fierce. I was going to save her. From you. From poverty. From a father too broken to function. Working 2 jobs and still drowning in debt. From a future in a wheelchair with inadequate care because you can't afford proper treatment. He gestured with the rifle toward Emma. Look at her. She deserves better than a foreclosed house and a father who reeks of failure. You don't get to decide that. Ethan's weapon arm was aching from holding position. You don't get to play God with people's lives because you couldn't save your own son. Neither could you, Marcus roared. And for the first time his facade cracked completely. You couldn't save your wife. You were sitting at a desk doing paperwork while she burned alive. Where were you when she needed you? Where were you when Emma needed you? You're just like me, a man who chose wrong and has to live with the consequences. The words hit like physical blows, because they were true. Ethan had been at the station. He could have been home. Should have been home. The paperwork could have waited if he'd been there. He could have pulled Sarah out, could have grabbed Emma before the ceiling collapsed. He could have... No, Emma's voice cut through his spiral. No, you're wrong. My daddy isn't like you. She'd rolled her wheelchair out from behind the desk. Sophie tried to grab her, but Emma pushed forward, moving between Ethan and Marcus, putting herself in the line of fire. Emma, get back. Ethan tried to grab her, but she swatted his hand away. My daddy didn't kill anyone's mama, Emma said. Her voice was getting stronger with each word, the silence of 10 months burning away in righteous fury. My daddy saves people. That's what he does. He saved Tyler and Sophie. He saved Hope. He would have saved Mama if he'd known. But you, she pointed at Marcus with a trembling finger. You knew. You planned it. You took her away from me. Marcus's rifle lowered slightly. Child, you don't understand. Your mother discovered what I was doing. She was treating one of my dogs, a K9 I was training for the program. She saw the injuries, the fear. She threatened to report me, to destroy everything. I gave her a choice: stay silent, and I'd make sure you were taken care of if anything happened to her. She refused. She chose principle over her family's security. She chose right over wrong. Emma was shaking now, but not with fear, with rage. And you punished her for it. You killed her, and then you came to her funeral, and you told my daddy that some fires take more than they burn. You knew. You watched us cry, and you knew. Wells shifted uncomfortably. Boss, we need to move. Storm's getting worse. And if they got a signal out, they didn't. Marcus's eyes never left Emma. The storm killed communications. But she's right. Jackson, we need to finish this. He raised the rifle again, this time pointing directly at Ethan. I'm sorry. Deputy, I truly am. But you've seen too much. You know about Dorothy, about the operation. I can't let you leave. You kill a cop, Marcus, and you'll have every law enforcement agency in 3 states hunting you. There's no coming back from that. There's no coming back from any of this. Marcus's finger moved to the trigger. My wife hung herself a year after Dylan died. Couldn't live with the guilt of blaming me. I've been dead inside for 14 years. What's one more body on the pile? Echo lunged. 75 pounds of German Shepherd launched across 12 feet of space like a missile. Marcus's rifle discharged, the sound deafening in the concrete room, but Echo had already hit his arm. The shot went wild, punching into the ceiling. Dust and concrete fragments rained down. Wells aimed his pistol at Echo. Ethan didn't think. He fired. The Glock's report merged with Wells's as both weapons discharged simultaneously. Wells' shot hit Echo. Ethan saw her yelp and tumble. His own shot caught Wells in the shoulder, spinning him around. The pistol clattered across the floor. The younger man moved, fast, grabbed Emma's wheelchair and yanked it backward, pulling Emma away from the fight. She screamed. Hope tumbled from Sophie's arms, hit the floor, and scrambled under the desk, yipping in terror. Nobody move or the girl gets hurt. The younger man, Marcus called him Pike, had a knife now, held it to Emma's throat, not pressed against skin, but close enough that any struggle would draw blood. Everything froze. Ethan's weapon was trained on Pike, but the angle was wrong. Emma's head blocked a clean shot. Pike was using her as a human shield, crouched behind the wheelchair. Marcus was on the ground, Echo's teeth buried in his forearm. Blood poured from the wound. But Marcus wasn't screaming. He was laughing. A broken, horrible sound. See what happens when you fight. Everyone gets hurt. Everyone loses something. He grabbed a fire extinguisher from the floor with his free hand and swung it at Echo's head. The dog released his arm and staggered back, dazed. "Echo." Emma tried to reach for the dog, but Pike's knife pressed closer. "I said don't move, little girl." Pike's voice was cold, professional. This wasn't his first hostage situation. Wells was clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers, but he'd managed to retrieve his pistol. Now both Marcus and Wells were armed again, and Pike had Emma. 3-on-1 had just become an execution waiting to happen. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus said, climbing to his feet. His arm was a mess, but he held the rifle steady with his other hand. "Pike, take the girl to the truck. We stick to the plan. She's still worth $25,000 to the family in Vancouver. Maybe more now, given the drama." "You're taking her nowhere." Ethan's voice was flat, dead. The voice he'd used in Afghanistan when he knew the mission was compromised and survival was unlikely. "I will kill you. Maybe not today, maybe not here, but I will find you, and I will kill you." "Daddy, don't." Emma's voice was small again, terrified. The 8-year-old child, not the fierce defender. "Please don't leave me, not like Mama. Please." "I won't leave you, baby. I promise." Marcus sighed. "You're going to make me kill you in front of your daughter. You understand that that's the memory she'll carry watching you die, just like she watched her mother die. Is your pride worth that trauma?" "My pride?" Ethan laughed, and it sounded unhinged even to himself. "You think this is about pride? You killed my wife. You were going to take my daughter. You've got 2 children in cages who've been here for weeks. You're a trafficker, a murderer, and a coward who hides behind children. So no, Marcus, this isn't about pride. This is about making sure you never hurt another family the way you hurt mine. Noble words from a man about to die, maybe. But here's the thing you didn't count on." Ethan smiled, and it was predatory. "I'm not alone." Sophie stepped out from behind the desk. In her hands, Wells's dropped pistol. Dropped. She'd picked it up during the chaos. And now it was aimed at Pike's back. Her hands weren't steady. An 8-year-old girl holding a .357 was absurd, dangerous, likely to shoot herself as much as the target. But Pike didn't know that. He only knew there was a weapon pointed at his spine. "Let her go," Sophie said. Her voice shook, but her eyes were determined. "Let her go, or I swear I'll shoot." Pike tried to look over his shoulder without moving his body. "Kid, you don't want to—" Sophie pulled the hammer back. The click was obscenely loud. "I've been in a cage for 5 weeks. He beat me, starved me, told me my parents didn't want me anymore. You think I care about consequences? Let her go." Standoff within a standoff. Marcus's rifle on Ethan, Ethan's Glock on Marcus, Pike's knife on Emma. Sophie's pistol on Pike, Wells bleeding out, weapon hanging loose in his hand. Echo struggling to stand, blood matting her fur. Tyler catatonic under the desk, hands over his ears. Hope whimpering somewhere in the shadows. The moment stretched. Seconds felt like hours. Everyone was calculating angles, odds, consequences. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness. The generator had died, or someone had cut it. Chaos erupted in the black. Ethan moved on instinct, diving toward where Emma had been. His hands found the wheelchair, but it was empty. Someone was running footsteps, multiple sets. A gunshot muzzle flash blinding in the dark, then another. Someone screamed. Emma, Sophie. He couldn't tell. Emma, Emma, where are you? Ethan's voice was raw. Daddy, I'm... Her voice cut off. Sounds of struggle. Another muzzle flash. This time Ethan saw the silhouette Pike, dragging Emma toward the door. She was fighting, kicking with legs that weren't supposed to work. But Pike was too strong. Ethan fired. Once, twice. The flashes showed Pike dropping, Emma falling. God, had he hit his daughter? No. She was moving, crawling. Pike was down, clutching his leg. Sophie, get down. Ethan couldn't see, but he heard the girl drop. Good. She was smart. Survivor smart. His flashlight was gone, dropped during the scuffle. He moved by sound, by the blueprint of the room he'd built in his head. Reached the door. Emma's breathing. Close. He grabbed her, pulled her to him. I've got you. I've got you. Baby. Daddy. I can't. My legs. I moved them, but now they won't. It's okay. You're okay. He was checking her in the dark, hands searching for blood, for wounds. Nothing. She was whole. Lights flickered. Emergency lights, dim and red. The room looked like a scene from hell. Wells was unconscious. Blood pooled around him. Pike was writhing. Shot in the thigh. Sophie stood frozen. Wells' gun still in her hands, pointed at nothing. Tyler was visible now. Curled so tightly under the desk, he looked like he was trying to fold himself into non-existence. Echo was standing, barely. Blood dripped from her side where Wells's shot had grazed her. She was positioned between the children and Marcus, who was still standing, still holding the rifle, but his arm was mangled and his face had gone gray from blood loss. It's over. Marcus. Ethan had his weapon trained on him, but his other arm was around Emma, holding her against his chest. You're bleeding out. Wells needs an ambulance. Pike's not going anywhere. Surrender. Marcus looked at the carnage, at the children he'd caged, at the blood, so much blood, at Echo, who despite her injuries hadn't backed down, at Ethan, who'd kept fighting even when outgunned and outmaneuvered. My son was 8 years old. Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. Same age as that little girl you just saved from me. His favorite color was blue. He wanted to be a firefighter, like his old man. He collected model trucks. Marcus swayed. He called me his hero, right up until the moment he realized I wasn't coming, wasn't going to save him. Marcus, I couldn't save him. But I thought if I could save other children, if I could take them from families who didn't deserve them and give them to families who'd cherish them, maybe it would balance. Maybe Dylan would forgive me. That's not saving, Marcus. That's stealing. It's evil. I know. And Marcus smiled. Actually smiled. I've known for years. But knowing doesn't stop the grief. Does it? Knowing doesn't bring them back. He raised the rifle, not toward Ethan, toward himself, under his chin. "No," Emma screamed. Don't do it. You have to face what you did. You have to. I have been facing it. Child, every day for 15 years. I'm just tired. So tired." The rifle discharged. Marcus's body crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. The sound echoed, reverberating off concrete walls, mixing with Emma's screams and Sophie's sobs, and the pitiful whimper from Hope hiding under the desk, and Echo's low, mournful howl. Ethan turned Emma's face into his shoulder so she wouldn't see. But it was too late. She'd already seen another death. Another trauma to add to the collection. Outside, the wind howled. The blizzard had fully arrived, sealing them inside the warehouse with the living and the dead. The emergency lights cast everything in shades of crimson, turning the warehouse into a tableau of wounds and horror. Ethan's hands shook as he checked Emma for injuries a second time, then a third, unable to believe she was truly unharmed. She wasn't crying anymore. That was worse. She just stared at Marcus's body with eyes that had gone somewhere far away, somewhere Ethan couldn't reach. Emma, look at me." He cupped her face, forced her gaze to his. "Stay with me, baby. Don't go to that place. Don't disappear again." Her lips moved. He said Mama chose principle over family. That's not true. Is it Mama didn't? She wouldn't? Your Mama chose what was right, always. That's who she was. Ethan's voice cracked. She would have reported him knowing the risk, because that's what heroes do. And you're just like her. Sophie had finally dropped the pistol. It clattered to the concrete with a sound like a judge's gavel. She was staring at her hands as if they belonged to someone else, someone capable of holding a gun on another human being. "I was going to shoot him. I was really going to do it. But you didn't." Ethan released Emma long enough to check Pike, who was conscious but in shock. Blood pulsing from his thigh wound. Femoral artery was intact. He'd live. Unfortunately, Ethan used Pike's own belt as a tourniquet, cinching it tight enough to make the man gasp. "You gave him a chance to make the right choice. That takes more courage than pulling the trigger. It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. Breathe. In through your nose, out through your mouth." Ethan moved to Wells next. Shoulder wound, lots of blood, but the man was still breathing, unconscious but stable. He used his own shirt to pack the wound, applied pressure. His shoulder screamed the same shoulder he'd injured climbing the tree, dislocated twice before, now supporting a 200-pound man's weight while he worked. Tyler hadn't moved from under the desk. Ethan could see him in the shadows, rocking slightly, hands still clamped over his ears, even though the shooting had stopped. Trauma response. The boy had probably been somewhere else mentally since the first gunshot, maybe before that, maybe since the day he'd been taken from whatever home he'd known. Echo limped over to Ethan, pressing against his leg. The bullet had gouged a furrow along her ribs, painful, bleeding, but not fatal. She'd been lucky. Or maybe luck had nothing to do with it. Maybe some things were just too stubborn to die easily. "Good girl. You're such a good girl." Ethan's hand found her head. scratched behind her ears the way she'd always loved. Echo whined, then moved to Emma, who was still sitting frozen in her wheelchair. The dog laid her head on Emma's lap, and the girl's hands automatically buried themselves in fur. Hope emerged from under the desk, limping slightly but alive, and immediately went to Echo, pressing against her larger body. The puppy's presence seemed to ground Echo, remind her of why she'd fought so hard. She licked Hope's head, and the puppy's tail wagged weakly. "We need help." Sophie's voice was small. "We need an ambulance. Police. Someone." Ethan pulled out his radio. Still dead. He tried his cell phone. No signal. The blizzard had killed that too. Or maybe the warehouse's concrete walls were blocking it. He looked toward the door, outside. Through the small window, he could see nothing but white. The blizzard had arrived with a vengeance. Visibility was 0. Temperature was probably 20 below with wind chill. No one was coming. Not for hours. Maybe not until morning. They were trapped. Okay. Ethan forced his mind to work through the panic. Prioritize. Assess. Act. Okay, Wells is stable for now. Pike's not bleeding out. Marcus is dead. Say it. Marcus is gone. We need to keep warm. Keep safe until the storm passes and rescue arrives. How long? Sophie asked. I don't know. Hours. Maybe all night. Emma's head snapped up. All night. Here with... She couldn't say it. With the body. I'll find something to cover him. You won't have to look at him. Ethan stood, his legs unsteady. How much adrenaline could one body produce before it just gave up? He felt like he was running on fumes, the crash waiting just beyond the next moment. Sophie, can you help Tyler? See if you can get him to come out? Sophie nodded and moved toward the desk. Tyler. It's Sophie. The bad men are stopped. It's okay. You can come out now. Her voice was gentle, the voice of someone who understood that words meant nothing when your brain was locked in survival mode, but you said them anyway because silence was worse. Ethan found a tarp in the corner, old, paint-stained, but it would do. He draped it over Marcus's body, tried not to think about the man underneath, tried not to think about Dylan Thorne, 8 years old, dying in his father's arms. Tried not to think about how thin the line was between love and madness, between grief and monstrosity. Emma was watching him. Daddy, when Mama died, did you ever think about doing what he did? The question hit him like a physical blow. He turned to face his daughter, this 7-year-old child who'd been forced to think about suicide and murder and all the ways people break. Yes. Her eyes widened. Not seriously, not with a plan, but the thought was there, in the dark moments. When the bills kept coming and you wouldn't talk and I couldn't sleep because every time I closed my eyes I saw your mama burning and heard myself thinking that if I'd just been home, if I'd just not been so damn dedicated to my job, to protocol, to doing everything right according to some book someone else wrote. He stopped, breathed. But then I'd look at you, and I'd remember that you lost your mama. And if I gave up, you'd lose me too. And that wasn't acceptable. But you wanted to. Wanting and doing are different things. Marcus wanted to save children. He ended up caging them. I wanted to give up. I ended up here. Saving you. Saving Sophie and Tyler. Our choices matter more than our wants. Sophie had coaxed Tyler out from under the desk. The boy was responsive now, at least physically. He let Sophie hold his hand, let her guide him to sit against the wall. But his eyes were still empty. Whatever had been inside Tyler before this nightmare had been carved out, leaving a shell. We should look for supplies, Sophie said. She was trying to be useful, trying to focus on something concrete instead of the horror. Food, water, blankets. If we're here all night? Ethan nodded. Good thinking. Stay together. Don't go far. Yell if you find anything. Sophie and Tyler well. Sophie pulling Tyler headed toward the back of the warehouse. Emma stayed in her wheelchair, hands buried in Echo's fur. Hope nestled in her lap. The three of them, girl, dog, and puppy, looked like survivors of a shipwreck, clinging to each other in cold water. Ethan checked Pike again. The man was conscious now, eyes tracking Ethan with a mixture of fear and hatred. You shot me. You had a knife to my daughter's throat. I showed restraint by aiming for your leg. Ethan checked the tourniquet. Still tight. Good. How many children did you help Marcus take? Pike laughed a bitter, broken sound. You think I'm going to confess, give you evidence I want a lawyer? You'll get a lawyer after you spend a night bleeding on a concrete floor in a freezing warehouse, knowing that at any moment I could decide that tourniquet needs to be looser or tighter. Ethan leaned close. How many? Pike's jaw clenched. Then, perhaps recognizing that defiance would gain him nothing. 15 over 3 years. I didn't know what he was doing with them at first. Thought it was some kind of foster program. Private adoptions. By the time I understood, he stopped. I needed the money. My sister's got cancer. No insurance. I needed the money. Everyone needs money. Not everyone sells children to get it. Yeah. Well, not everyone's got a dying sister and a conscience that stopped working around the same time his bank account hit zero. Pike's eyes closed. Do what you want to me. I'm already dead inside. Ethan wanted to hit him, wanted to make him hurt the way Sophie hurt, the way Tyler hurt, the way Emma hurt. But what good would it do? Pike was right. He was already dead in the ways that mattered. Sophie's voice echoed from the back of the warehouse. I found something. Ethan left Pike and went to investigate. Sophie was standing in what looked like a break room table, chairs, a small kitchenette. She'd opened a cabinet and found bottles of water, boxes of crackers, cans of soup. Not much, but enough. There's more, Sophie said, pointing to a closet. Inside blankets, old but clean, and something that made Ethan's blood freeze, a filing cabinet, unlocked. He opened the top drawer. Files, names, dates, photographs. The complete record of Marcus's operation. 15 children, just like Pike had said. Some marked relocated, sold. Others marked in transit in the warehouse, waiting. 2 marked with red X's, dead. One file caught his attention. Chen, Sophie, age 8, acquired October 28, 2023. Status? In transit. Notes: parents work excessive hours. Child frequently alone. Target of opportunity. There was a photograph of Sophie's house, her parents leaving for work. Sophie getting off the school bus alone. Another file. Reeves, Tyler, age 6, acquired November 15, 2023. Status: in transit. Notes: father has history of domestic violence, mother substance abuse, child at risk. Photographs of Tyler with bruises, a black eye, a school report expressing concern. Marcus had targeted vulnerable children, kids whose parents were absent, abusive, or struggling, kids who fell through society's cracks. He'd convinced himself he was rescuing them, but he'd just been stealing them from one nightmare and selling them into another. The worst file was at the back. Thorne, Dylan, age 8, deceased August 2008. Inside was a coroner's report. Cause of death, smoke inhalation. But there were notes in the margins, handwritten in Marcus's script. Marcus's actual cause: blunt force trauma to abdomen, covered up, my fault, my rage, my sin. Dylan hadn't died in the forest fire. Marcus had killed him. An accident. Maybe a father losing his temper. A blow that landed wrong. And then he'd used the forest fire to cover it up. Staged the scene. Lied to investigators. Everything since the trafficking. The children. The cages. It was all penance for a murder Marcus could never admit to anyone but himself. Mr. Brooks. Sophie was looking at the files, at the photographs. That's me. That's my house. He watched me for weeks, probably, learning your routine, waiting for the right moment. Ethan closed the drawer. Sophie didn't need to see more. We'll make sure your parents get these files. They'll understand it wasn't your fault. None of this was your fault. They're going to blame themselves for working so much, for leaving me alone. Probably, but that's their burden, not yours. You survived. Sophie, that's what matters. And they gathered the supplies: water, crackers, blankets, and returned to the main room. Emma had wheeled herself closer to the space heater Ethan had found and turned on, its orange glow providing minimal warmth in the vast, cold space. Echo and Hope were pressed against her, a pile of fur and trust. Ethan distributed the blankets, one for Emma, one for Sophie and Tyler to share, one for himself. He'd give the children the space heater. He'd keep watch over Pike and Wells, make sure neither of them died before help arrived, though part of him thought the world would be better off if they did. The night stretched ahead, long and dark and full of ghosts. Emma's voice broke the silence. Daddy, tell me about Mama. Before everything. Tell me something good. Ethan sat beside her wheelchair, wrapped his blanket around both of them. Your mama could never keep plants alive. Every houseplant we ever bought died within a month. But she kept trying, said every living thing deserved someone to care for it, even if she was terrible at it. Emma managed a small smile. I remember the cactus. She killed a cactus. She overwatered it, drowned it with love. Ethan laughed, and it felt strange, laughing in a room where a man had died hours before. But maybe that's what survivors did, found moments of light in the darkness. Because the alternative was being swallowed whole. Sophie was humming something, a lullaby, maybe, or a song her mother used to sing. Tyler was leaning against her, eyes closed, breathing evening out into something like sleep. Hope was asleep in Emma's lap, tiny chest rising and falling. Echo's eyes were half closed, but her ears were still alert, still listening for threats. The blizzard howled outside. The emergency lights flickered. Wells groaned in his unconsciousness. Pike stared at the ceiling. Marcus lay under the tarp, forever frozen in his final moment of grief and choice. And Ethan held his daughter, this miracle child who'd learned to speak again, who'd actually stood on legs that weren't supposed to work, who'd faced down a killer because she'd learned from her mother that principle mattered more than safety. "We're going to be okay," he whispered into Emma's hair. "I promise. We're going to be okay." Emma's response was quiet, but it carried the weight of belief. "I know, Daddy. Because you always keep your promises." Outside, the storm raged on, burying the world in white. But inside, in a warehouse that had housed so much darkness, 3 children and 1 broken deputy sheriff kept each other warm, kept each other human, and waited for dawn. Dawn arrived not with light, but with sound, the distant wail of sirens cutting through the dying wind. Emma heard them first, her head lifting from where it had been resting against Ethan's shoulder. They dozed fitfully through the night, never truly sleeping, always half aware of the bodies around them, living and dead. The warehouse had become a tomb they shared with their nightmares. "Daddy, someone's coming." Ethan struggled to his feet, every muscle in his body screaming protest. His shoulder had stiffened during the night into a knot of agony. His hand, cut from the wire that had held hope, was infected. He could see the red streak starting to climb his forearm. He'd ignored it, would continue ignoring it until the children were safe. Pain was nothing. Pain could wait. The sirens grew louder. Multiple vehicles. The cavalry had finally arrived. 12 hours too late, but arriving nonetheless. Ethan moved to the door, pushed it open against the snow that had drifted against it during the night. The blizzard had passed, leaving behind a world transformed into pure white silence. The snow was 4 feet deep in places, sculpted by wind into alien landscapes. 3 Sheriff's Department SUVs were plowing through the drifts, followed by 2 ambulances and a fire truck. Ethan recognized the lead vehicle, Sheriff Dalton's personal truck, the one he reserved for emergencies. The convoy stopped 50 yards from the warehouse, and armed deputies poured out, weapons drawn, taking defensive positions. Sheriff Dalton himself emerged, a bull of a man at 62, with gray hair and a face weathered by 30 years of Montana law enforcement. He raised a megaphone. "Ethan Brooks' status report." Ethan stepped into the doorway, hands raised so they could see he was unarmed, unthreatening. "Sheriff, I've got 3 children safe, 2 suspects down, 1 deceased. 1 officer injured me, but ambulatory. Request immediate medical for the children and suspects." "Copy that, medics. Move up." Dalton lowered the megaphone and strode forward, deputies flanking him. When he reached Ethan, his professional mask cracked. "Jesus Christ. Brooks, we've been trying to reach you for 12 hours. What the hell happened here?" You're going to want to see this for yourself, sir. But prepare yourself. It's bad." What followed was chaos rendered in slow motion. Paramedics swarmed the warehouse. Sophie and Tyler were examined first dehydrated, malnourished, traumatized, but alive. Tyler still hadn't spoken, his eyes tracking the paramedics with animal wariness. Sophie clung to the female paramedic, finally allowing herself to be the 8-year-old child she was, sobbing into the woman's shoulder while being checked for injuries. Emma refused to be separated from Echo and Hope. The paramedics tried to examine her, but she screamed, actually screamed when they attempted to take the dogs away. "No, they stay with me. They saved us. They stay. Ma'am, we need to check the animals for rabies. They're military canines." Ethan's voice cut through the confusion. "Echo served in Afghanistan. She's vaccinated, registered, documented. Hope is her puppy. They're not strays. They're heroes. They stay with my daughter." Sheriff Dalton nodded to the paramedics. "Let the girl keep the dogs. Brooks is right if that's Echo. She's got more medals than half my deputies. Treat her with respect." The veterinary ambulance arrived 20 minutes later, summoned specifically for Echo and Hope. The vet, a young woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Sophie, examined both dogs on site. Echo's bullet graze was cleaned and stitched. Hope's near strangulation had caused tissue damage, but nothing permanent. Both dogs would recover fully. "She's remarkable, Doctor," Chen said, running her hands over Echo's scars. "This dog has been through hell multiple times and she's still fighting, still protecting. I've never seen such loyalty." Pike and Wells were loaded into ambulances under armed guard. Pike was conscious, sullen, refusing to speak. Wells had regained consciousness during the night but remained groggy, disoriented. Both would survive to face trial. Both would spend decades in prison. Marcus's body was removed last, zipped into a black bag and carried out on a stretcher. As they lifted him, a photograph fell from his pocket. Sheriff Dalton picked it up, a young boy, maybe 8, wearing a scout uniform, grinning at the camera. Dylan. Marcus had carried his dead son's photo for 15 years, a talisman of grief worn smooth by constant touching. "Brooks," Dalton's voice was quiet. "Walk me through it." Ethan did, starting with Emma's first words, the discovery of Hope, following Echo to the warehouse, the cages, the files, the confrontation, Marcus's confession, the suicide. He left nothing out, each word costing him something he couldn't name. When he finished, Dalton was silent for a long moment. Then, "Dorothy Sullivan. She helped Marcus kill my wife. She was paid $5,000. She never received it. She murdered Sarah for a promise. Where is Dorothy now? Her house, probably. She doesn't know we found out. I need to be the one to arrest her. Sheriff, I need—" His voice broke. "I need to look her in the eyes and ask her why. Why cookies and casseroles and sympathy when she was the one who locked the door? I need to understand." Dalton nodded slowly. "I'll have units pick her up. But Brooks, you're not going anywhere near that arrest. You're too close. You're injured. And frankly, I'm not sure you wouldn't kill her. I wouldn't. You say that now. But when you're standing in front of the woman who murdered your wife, When she's making excuses, I've seen good men break over less. Dalton gripped Ethan's uninjured shoulder. Let me handle Dorothy. You focus on your daughter. She needs you. Emma was being loaded into an ambulance, Echo and Hope being placed in carriers beside her stretcher. She was calling for Ethan, panic in her voice. Daddy, Daddy, where are you? I'm here, baby, but right here. Ethan climbed into the ambulance, sat beside her. I'm not leaving you. Promise? Promise. The hospital was a blur. Emma was admitted for observation. Her brief moment of standing and walking had been adrenaline-fueled, and the doctors needed to understand what had happened neurologically. Tests were ordered, MRIs, CT scans, nerve conduction studies. The initial diagnosis was stunning. Her spinal cord compression had been partially relieved by inflammation reduction over the months. The adrenaline surge had allowed her brain to bypass pain signals and activate dormant neural pathways. She might walk again. With therapy, with time, she might actually walk. It's not a guarantee, Dr. Elizabeth Warren cautioned. She was a neurologist, mid-40s, with kind eyes that had seen too many miracles turn out to be false hope. What happened last night was extraordinary, but it doesn't mean permanent recovery. Emma will need intensive physical therapy, possibly surgery, and even then, but there's a chance. Ethan's voice was hoarse from disuse and smoke and screaming. You're saying there's a chance? Yes, there's a chance. Emma was asleep in the hospital bed, finally resting without nightmares for the first time in 10 months. Echo lay on the floor beside her bed against hospital policy. But the administrator had taken one look at the news coverage already hitting the wires and decided that the German shepherd who'd saved 3 children and exposed a trafficking ring had earned the right to stay. Hope was curled in Emma's arms, both dog and girl breathing in synchronized peace. Sheriff Dalton appeared in the doorway. His expression told Ethan everything he needed to know before words were spoken. Dorothy? Ethan asked. She's in custody. Units picked her up 2 hours ago. She didn't resist. Didn't run, just surrendered. She's asking to speak to you. No. Brooks. No. I can't. I can't look at her without seeing Sarah burning, without hearing Emma scream. I can't. He stopped. Fought for control. What did she say? When you arrested her? Dalton pulled out a small recorder. She waived her Miranda rights, said she wanted to confess everything. Asked that you hear this. He pressed play. Dorothy's voice, thin and old and broken. I want Ethan Brooks to know I'm sorry. I know sorry doesn't mean anything, doesn't bring back Sarah, doesn't erase what I did, but I need him to know I never meant for Emma to be hurt. I didn't know she was in the house. Marcus said Sarah would get out through the window. He said it was just meant to scare her, make her keep quiet about the dogs, but the fire spread too fast. I heard Sarah screaming. I heard Emma screaming. I stood outside with my hand on the door handle for 10 seconds, 10 seconds where I could have opened it, could have saved them. But I was scared. Scared of Marcus, scared of going to jail, scared of being poor and alone and dying without my heart medication. So I ran, called 911 from my house, pretended I'd just noticed the fire, and I've lived with Sarah's screams in my head every night since. I killed her. I killed her for $5,000 I never got. I killed her because I was weak and scared and evil. I'm evil. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The recording ended. Dalton turned it off. Ethan sat in silence, tears streaming down his face. Not tears of grief, he'd cried those for months. These were tears of rage, pure and incandescent. Dorothy was sorry. She was evil. She admitted everything, but Sarah was still dead. Emma had still lost her mother. And all because an old woman was scared of dying poor. What happens to her now? His voice was a whisper. She'll be charged with felony murder, conspiracy, possibly more. She'll die in prison. Her age works against her. 73 years old means she's got maybe 10, 15 years left. She'll spend all of them behind bars. Good. The word tasted like ashes. Good. But it wasn't good. Nothing about this was good. Justice wasn't resurrection. Punishment wasn't restoration. Dorothy could rot in prison for 1,000 years, and Sarah would still be dead. Emma would still have lost 10 months of speech. Tyler would still be broken. Sophie would still have nightmares. And Marcus's victims, 15 children whose lives had been stolen, would still bear those scars. 3 days passed. Emma was released from the hospital with a walker and a physical therapy schedule that would consume the next year of their lives. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. The neural pathways that had activated during the warehouse crisis could potentially be retrained, strengthened. She might never run, but she might walk. That was something. That was everything. Sophie and Tyler were reunited with their parents. Sophie's reunion was tearful, joyful. Her mother and father holding her like they'd never let go. Tyler's was quieter. His father, the one with the history of domestic violence, didn't show. His mother came alone, sober for the first time in months, according to the social worker, holding Tyler and sobbing apologies he couldn't hear through the walls he'd built in his mind. The other children from Marcus's files were located over the following weeks. 8 sold into trafficking networks across the Canadian border were recovered in a multi-agency operation. 3 were found with families who genuinely believed they were adopting orphans. Heartbroken to learn the truth, 2 remained missing, their trail gone cold. The 2 marked with red X's in Marcus's files were confirmed dead victims of the relocation process, buried in unmarked graves Marcus had kept detailed notes about. Their families would finally have answers, closure, the cold comfort of knowing. The press descended like locusts. Hero, deputy saves children. German Shepherd exposes trafficking ring. 7-year-old's first words lead to rescue. The story had everything: dogs, children in peril, a dead villain, a suicide, corruption. It was catnip for the 24-hour news cycle. Ethan refused all interviews, but he couldn't control what others said. Sophie's parents went on Good Morning America, thanking him with tears in their eyes. Tyler's mother gave a statement to the local news, saying Ethan had given her son back even though her son was still lost somewhere inside himself. The governor called, offering commendations. The mayor planned a ceremony, and through it all, Emma sat in her wheelchair, using it less each day, as her strength returned with Echo and Hope beside her. Watching her father become someone the world called a hero while she knew the truth he was just a man who'd chosen to stop when someone needed help. That was all. That was everything. 1 week after the warehouse, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a check for $340,000 and a note written in a dozen different hands. Deputy Brooks, we are the parents of the children you saved, some directly, some indirectly, some whose children you brought home, some whose children you helped us finally mourn. We took up a collection. It's not enough. It could never be enough. But it's something. For Emma's medical bills, for your wife's memory, for the future. Thank you for showing up when everyone else looked away. Thank you for being the man who stopped. The families. Ethan sat at his kitchen table, staring at the check, unable to process it. $340,000. Sarah's medical debt paid. Emma's therapy paid. The mortgage paid. Everything they'd been drowning in, suddenly gone. Not gone, transformed. From debt into hope, from grief into possibility. Emma rolled her wheelchair into the kitchen, using her legs more than the wheels now, building strength. Daddy, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, baby. Everything's... He couldn't finish. Just held up the check. Emma stared at it. Then, slowly, she smiled. Mama would say, we're blessed. Your mama would say we should use it to help others. Can't we do both? And for the first time since Sarah died, Ethan Brooks laughed, really laughed. Yeah, baby. Yeah, we can do both. Outside, Echo and Hope played in the snow, the older dog teaching the younger one how to track scents, how to alert, how to serve, teaching her that loyalty was the highest calling, that protecting those who couldn't protect themselves was the purpose that made suffering bearable. Inside, a father and daughter began to plan a future that, for the first time in 10 months, didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. The courtroom was packed on the day of Dorothy Sullivan's sentencing, January 20th, 2 months after the warehouse and the media circus had only intensified. Every major network had cameras outside, inside. The gallery was filled with families, some whose children had been recovered, some whose children were still missing, some whose children had been found in graves. They'd all come to see justice served, to witness the woman who'd enabled 15 kidnappings finally face consequences. Ethan sat in the front row with Emma beside him. She was using a walker now, not the wheelchair. 2 months of intensive physical therapy had given her back more than anyone had dared hope. She could stand for 5 minutes at a time. She could walk 20 feet without stopping. The doctors called it remarkable. Emma called it her mama's final gift, the strength to stand up for what was right. Dorothy was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, shuffling like the 73-year-old woman she was. She looked smaller than Ethan remembered, frailer. Her hair had gone completely white in 2 months. She'd aged a decade in weeks. When her eyes found Ethan and Emma, something crumpled in her face. She looked away, couldn't hold their gaze. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, a woman known for her fairness and her lack of patience for excuses. She'd reviewed all the evidence, heard all the testimony. Now came the moment of reckoning. Dorothy Mae Sullivan, you have pleaded guilty to felony murder in the death of Sarah Brooks, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and accessory to human trafficking. Before I pass sentence, the court will hear victim impact statements. Emma Brooks, would you like to speak? Ethan squeezed Emma's hand. They'd discussed this for weeks. Emma had written something, rewritten it, torn it up, written it again. She'd asked him if she had to do it. He'd told her no. She didn't. Justice didn't require her trauma to be performed for an audience. But she'd decided she wanted to, needed to. Emma stood with her walker, and a bailiff adjusted the microphone for her height. Her voice, when it came, was steady, stronger than it had been in the warehouse, stronger than the whispers of her first words. "Mrs. Dorothy, I called you that, Mrs. Dorothy, like you were family, like you were safe." Emma's hands gripped the walker so tightly, her knuckles went white. "You brought us cookies, chocolate chip, Mama's favorite. You brought them the day after she died. You hugged me at the funeral. You told me Mama was in heaven. You said she loved me so much. You said her last words were, 'Save Emma.'" Dorothy was crying now, silent tears streaming down her weathered face. "Were they?" Emma's voice cracked. "Were those really her last words? Or did you make that up to make yourself feel better? Because I need to know, Mrs. Dorothy. I need to know if my Mama's last thought was about me, or if she died knowing nobody was coming to save her, knowing the person who could open the door chose not to." They were real. Dorothy's voice was barely audible. "She did say your name. She did say, 'Save Emma.' I heard her. That's why I—" She stopped, swallowed. "That's why I've heard it every night since. Your Mama's voice, calling for you." Emma nodded slowly. "Good. I'm glad you hear her. I'm glad you can't forget, because I can't either. I remember the smoke. I remember screaming for her. I remember the ceiling falling and the pain and the darkness. I remember waking up and being told she was gone. I remember 10 months of not being able to speak because every time I tried, all I could hear was her screaming. And you," Emma's voice rose, "you were the one who helped kill her. For money. For $5,000 you never even got—" The courtroom was silent, except for muffled sobs from the gallery. "I'm 7 years old, Mrs. Dorothy. 7. And I have to live the rest of my life without my Mama. I have to relearn how to walk. I have to go to therapy 3 times a week, because I have nightmares where I'm burning alive. I have to watch my daddy work himself to death trying to pay bills and take care of me and pretend he's not dying inside because the woman he loved was murdered by someone we trusted." Emma paused, breathing hard. Ethan was crying now. Couldn't help it. "But you know what, Mrs. Dorothy, I'm going to walk again. I'm going to run. I'm going to grow up, and I'm going to be a veterinarian like my Mama. I'm going to save animals that people hurt. I'm going to stand up for things that can't stand up for themselves. I'm going to be the kind of person my Mama was proud of. And every single day I do that, it's going to be proof that you failed. You tried to take my Mama away, and you did. But you didn't take her love. You didn't take her lessons. You didn't take her from my heart." Emma turned to face Dorothy directly. "I can't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I hope someday you can forgive yourself, because that punishment living with what you did, that's worse than any jail." She sat down, and Ethan pulled her into his arms. The courtroom erupted in applause until Judge Morrison gavelled for silence. Sophie Chen spoke next, her parents flanking her. She described the cage, the fear, the certainty that she'd been abandoned, that her parents didn't love her, that nobody cared if she lived or died. She talked about Tyler, who still hadn't spoken, who rocked himself to sleep every night, who flinched at sudden movements and loud sounds. She talked about the other children whose faces had been on Marcus's board, children who might still be out there, might never come home. "You didn't kidnap me, Mrs. Sullivan, but you made it possible. Every child Marcus took, you helped take. Because without you, without people willing to look the other way for money, monsters like Marcus couldn't exist. You're not just guilty of killing Mrs. Brooks. You're guilty of every child on that board." Tyler's mother spoke, her voice raw with grief and guilt. "My son doesn't speak anymore, doesn't play, doesn't smile. The doctors say he might, with years of therapy, but he might not. Marcus Thorne broke my boy, and you helped him do it. You can say you didn't know about the children, that you only knew about Mrs. Brooks, but that's a lie. Once you helped with one evil thing, you opened the door for all the rest." One by one, families spoke. 15 minutes of testimony became 30, became an hour. Judge Morrison let them all speak. Let the weight of Dorothy's crimes pile up in words and tears and broken voices. Finally, Dorothy was given the chance to speak. She stood shakily, refused her lawyer's assistance. "I don't have words that matter. Sorry is garbage. It's trash. It's what cowards say when they can't undo what they've done. But I'll say it anyway because it's all I have. I'm sorry. To Emma, to Mr. Brooks, to Sophie and Tyler and all the other children, to Mrs. Brooks' memory, to my own soul, which I sold for a promise of money I never got." Her voice grew stronger, angrier. "I was scared. I was poor. I was sick. My heart medication cost $600 a month, and I had $800 total to my name. I was going to die. So when Marcus offered me $5,000, I took it. I told myself it was just to scare Mrs. Brooks, that nobody would really get hurt. But I'm not stupid. I knew what fire does. I knew what a locked door meant. I chose money over a human life, over a mother, over a good woman who'd never done anything but try to help people." Dorothy looked directly at Emma. "Your mama was a hero, child?" She saw what Marcus was doing, and she refused to stay silent. Even when he threatened her, even when he told her that her family would pay if she talked, she chose right over safe. "And her voice broke. "I chose wrong. I chose selfishly. And I'll spend every day I have left wishing I could go back to that night and make a different choice. Wishing I'd opened that door. Wishing I'd called the police on Marcus instead of helping him. Wishing I'd died poor and sick with my soul intact instead of living rich." She laughed bitterly. "Well, not rich. Living with blood on my hands." She turned to Judge Morrison. "I deserve whatever you give me. Your Honor, life in prison, death. If Montana still had that option, I deserve to suffer. The only thing I ask is that my story be told, that when people hear about Marcus Thorne and his trafficking ring, they also hear about Dorothy Sullivan, the old woman who helped a murderer because she was scared of medical bills. Maybe it'll make someone else think twice. Maybe it'll make someone choose different than I did." Judge Morrison let the silence hang for a long moment. Then, "Dorothy Mae Sullivan, You have pleaded guilty to charges that carry a maximum sentence of life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The court has heard your confession, has heard your apology, has heard the devastating impact of your choices on multiple families, multiple children, and the community at large. She leaned forward. You claim you were scared, poor, sick, that you were facing death without your medication. I don't doubt that's true, but this court sees dozens of cases every year, people in poverty, people facing medical bankruptcy, people desperate and afraid. The vast majority of them don't become accessories to murder. They make hard choices, ethical choices, painful choices. They ask for help. They find resources. They sacrifice. What they don't do is condemn an innocent woman to burn alive. Now Dorothy was sobbing openly now. Your age is not a mitigating factor. Your fear is not a mitigating factor. Your remorse, while perhaps genuine, does not undo the death of Sarah Brooks or the trauma of 15 kidnapped children. You made a choice, Mrs. Sullivan. Now you will live with the consequences of that choice for whatever time you have remaining. Judge Morrison's gavel came down like a gunshot. I hereby sentence you to 25 years in the Montana State Prison, with no possibility of parole for 20 years. Given your age and health status, this is effectively a life sentence. May God have mercy on your soul, because this court will not. The courtroom erupted. Some people cheered, some wept. Emma sat very still, processing. 25 years. Dorothy would be 98 if she lived to see parole. She'd die in prison. It was justice. It was cruel. It was both. It was necessary. As bailiffs led Dorothy away, she looked back one last time at Emma. Her lips moved, forming words. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Emma's response was quiet, meant only for herself and her father, but Dorothy seemed to hear it anyway. I know you are, but it doesn't bring her back. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing, voices overlapping. Emma, how do you feel? Deputy Brooks, do you think justice was served? Is 25 years enough? What about the other children? What about Marcus's victims in Canada? Sheriff Dalton and 3 deputies formed a protective barrier, moving Ethan and Emma toward their truck. But before they reached it, Emma stopped, turned to the cameras. Ethan started to pull her away, but she shook her head. She had something to say. My mama always told me that the world is full of people who look away, people who see bad things happening and don't want to get involved, don't want the trouble, don't want the risk. Emma's voice carried, strong and clear. Mrs. Dorothy looked away. She heard my mama screaming, and she walked away. And that's what killed her. Not the fire. The walking away. She paused, letting the cameras capture her face, her walker, her strength. If you see something wrong, if you see someone hurting, someone in danger, someone who needs help, don't walk away. Don't look away. Do something. Tell someone. Be brave. Because my mama was brave. She saw dogs being hurt and she spoke up, even though it cost her everything. And I'm going to spend my whole life being that brave. Even when it's hard. Even when it's scary. especially then. Emma turned back to Ethan. Can we go home now, Daddy? I'm tired. Yeah, baby. Let's go home. They drove in silence for a while, Emma staring out the window at the snow-covered landscape. Echo and Hope were in the back seat, Echo's head resting on Hope's back. The puppy had grown 5 months old now, already showing signs of the powerful adult she'd become. Daddy, Emma's voice was small, do you think Mama would be proud of me for what I said to Mrs. Dorothy? Ethan's throat tightened. Your Mama would be so proud of you she'd burst. You stood up in front of all those people and you told the truth. You were brave and strong and kind, even when you had every right to be cruel. That's exactly who your Mama was. And it's exactly who you're becoming. I meant what I said about forgiving her. Emma was quiet for a moment. I can't do it yet. Maybe never. But I hope she finds some peace. Is that weird? To want the person who killed your mom to have peace? It's not weird. It's mercy. And mercy is the hardest kind of love there is. Ethan reached over, squeezed her hand. You're 7 years old, and you're teaching me things I should have learned decades ago. Your Mama definitely did something right. Emma smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. We're gonna be okay, aren't we? Yeah, sweetheart, we're gonna be okay. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at their house. Prison stationery, Dorothy's handwriting shaky, elderly, but readable. Dear Emma and Ethan, I won't waste your time with more apologies. I know they mean nothing, but there's something you should know. Something I need to tell you before I die in this place. The night of the fire, after I locked Sarah's door and ran away. I sat in my house listening to sirens and hating myself. I almost called Marcus, almost told him I was going to confess. But I was a coward. I stayed silent. 3 days later, Marcus came to my house, said he was grateful I'd kept quiet, said the $5,000 would be delivered soon. I asked him when. He laughed and said, when you've earned it by staying silent forever. That's when I knew I'd been played. There was never any money. He'd used my desperation against me, got me to commit murder for a promise he never intended to keep. I'd killed Sarah Brooks for free. For less than free, I'd damn my soul for nothing. I tell you this not to make you feel sorry for me. I tell you so you understand how evil works. Evil finds your weakness. Mine was poverty and fear, and it uses that weakness to make you betray everything you believe in. Evil doesn't pay its debts. It just takes and takes until there's nothing left of who you were. Emma, you said in court that I didn't take your Mama's love or her lessons from your heart. You were right. And I want you to know that watching you stand up in that courtroom, watching you choose mercy over hatred, it gave me something I don't deserve, hope. Hope that maybe some good can come from all this evil. That maybe your Mama's death, as senseless and wrong as it was, will teach people to be brave, to speak up, to not be like me. I'm dying in here. My heart condition has worsened without proper medication. The doctors say 6 months, maybe a year. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of dying without having made any of this right, but I can't make it right. I can only tell the truth and hope it helps someone, somewhere, make a better choice than I did. Ethan, I know you'll never forgive me. I don't ask you to. I ask only that you tell Emma's story. Tell Sarah's story. Tell them so that other little girls keep their mamas, so that other families don't break, so that other desperate old women don't make deals with devils. Tell them that Dorothy Sullivan was evil, not because she was born that way, but because she chose it. One choice, one moment, one locked door. That's all it takes to lose your soul. I hope you and Emma find peace. I hope you heal. I hope you build a life that honors Sarah's memory. I hope you forget I ever existed. Dorothy. Ethan read the letter 3 times. Then he showed it to Emma. They sat together at the kitchen table, the letter between them, trying to process this final confession. She's dying, Emma said finally. In 6 months? Good. The word came out harsher than Ethan intended. He waited for guilt to follow. But it didn't. Dorothy was dying, and he was glad. That made him what cruel human, both. Daddy, can we visit her before she dies? The question hit Ethan like a physical blow. Emma, no, absolutely not. I'm not letting you anywhere near that woman. I don't want to see her for her. I want to see her for me. Emma's eyes were earnest, old beyond their years. I said in court I hope she finds peace. But how can she find peace if everyone just hates her? If nobody shows her that there's another way Mama would visit her? Mama would want her to die with someone's forgiveness. Even if it's not ours. Your Mama would want you safe, protected, not exposed to... I'm already exposed. Daddy, I was there. I heard Mama die. I lived through Marcus. I stood in court and told Mrs. Dorothy what she did to us. I'm not a little girl who needs protecting from reality. Reality is already here. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, but Emma was right. She'd been through hell and back. Sheltering her now seemed like closing the barn door after the horses had escaped, died, and been reborn as something harder and wiser. If we do this, if we do it together, and we leave the second you're uncomfortable. Emma nodded. Together. 1 week later, they sat across from Dorothy Sullivan in the Montana State Prison visiting room. She looked like a ghost weight dropped. Skin gray, hands trembling. The heart condition was killing her, and prison health care was doing the bare minimum to keep her comfortable. Dorothy's eyes widened when she saw them. You came. Why? Emma spoke first. Because Mama would have wanted someone to show you that there's still good in the world, even after everything you did. Dorothy wept, not delicate tears, but gut-wrenching sobs that shook her frail body. I don't deserve your Mama's legacy. I don't deserve... Nobody deserves anything, Emma interrupted. We just get what we get, and right now, you got us, for 10 minutes, so don't waste it crying. Dorothy collected herself, wiped her face with shaking hands. What do you want from me? I want to know if you meant it, when you said you wish you'd made a different choice. Because words are easy. Meaning them is hard. Dorothy met Emma's eyes. I meant it, every word. If I could go back. You can't. None of us can go back. So what matters is forward. What are you going to do with your 6 months? Die in a cell. What else is there? Emma leaned forward. You could tell your story. Really tell it. To other people in here who made bad choices. To people who might be tempted to make the same choice you did. You could use your evil to teach people about good. That's what Mama would do. Dorothy stared at this 7-year-old child offering her redemption she didn't deserve. Why? Why would you help me? I'm not helping you. I'm helping all the other Mrs. Dorothys out there, the ones who are scared and poor and desperate and about to make a terrible mistake. If your story saves even one person from becoming you, then maybe, Emma's voice caught. Maybe Mama's death means something. Maybe it saves someone else's Mama. The visit lasted exactly 10 minutes. When it ended, Dorothy looked different. Not forgiven, not redeemed, but perhaps slightly less damned. As Ethan and Emma left the prison, Emma said quietly, "I didn't forgive her. Daddy, just so you know, I just gave her something to do with her dying. Is that wrong?" "No, baby. That's mercy, and mercy is never wrong." 2 months later, Dorothy Sullivan died in her prison cell. But before she died, she gave 17 interviews to journalists, church groups, and prison reform organizations. She told her story without excuse or justification. She became a cautionary tale about the cost of looking away, the price of choosing wrong, the way evil starts with a single compromise. Her final interview was with Emma, recorded via video call with Ethan and a therapist present. Dorothy's last words to the girl whose mother she'd killed were simple: "Be brave, like your mama. Don't ever look away. Promise me." Emma promised. And she kept that promise for the rest of her life. 5 years had transformed everything. The snow fell gently outside the Montana State Capitol building. December 23rd. Again, the anniversary that had once meant only trauma now carried layers of meaning too complex for simple words. Inside the Grand Rotunda, hundreds of people gathered for a ceremony that had been years in the making, a recognition that felt both overdue and overwhelming. Emma Brooks stood backstage in her navy dress. No walker in sight, no wheelchair, no braces, just a 12-year-old girl who'd learned to run again, to dance, to move through the world with the confidence of someone who'd died and been resurrected by sheer will and physical therapy 4 times a week for 5 years straight. Her blonde hair was longer now, pulled back in a braid her father had learned to do on YouTube. She looked so much like Sarah that sometimes Ethan had to look away, the resemblance a knife that cut with both grief and joy. Echo stood beside her, now 10 years old, graying around the muzzle but still alert, still protective. The German Shepherd wore a service vest that read "Therapy Dog, Montana Children's Hospital," because that's what she'd become in retirement, a comfort for traumatized children. A bridge between fear and healing. Hope, now 5, was beside Echo, fully grown and beautiful. Wearing her own vest, Search and Rescue K9 Montana SAR Unit, the puppy who'd nearly died in a noose had become a hero in her own right, credited with finding 4 missing hikers and 2 lost children in the Montana wilderness over the past 2 years. Sheriff Dalton appeared in the doorway. He'd aged, too, more gray than brown now, but his eyes still held that sharp assessment of a man who'd spent 35 years reading people. "You ready, Emma?" "I think so. It's a lot of people." 347. According to the fire marshal, every seat filled, standing room only, press from 6 states. "The governor himself is presenting." Dalton smiled. "No pressure, kid." Emma laughed, a sound that had taken 2 years of therapy to become natural again. Daddy says pressure is just importance wearing a scary mask. Once you look under the mask, it's just people. And people are just people. Your daddy's gotten philosophical in his old age. He's 34. That's not old. Tell that to my knees. Dalton's expression grew serious. You know you don't have to do this, right? The speech, the awards ceremony, the media, it's a lot for anyone, let alone someone your age. You can just accept the award and sit down. Nobody expects, I want to do it. I need to. Emma touched the folded paper in her pocket, her speech, written and rewritten a dozen times, carrying words she'd been building toward for 5 years. Mama would want me to use my voice. That's what she did. Used her voice even when it was dangerous, even when it cost her everything. Dalton nodded, understanding. She'd be so damn proud of you, Emma. You know that, right? I hope so. I'm trying to be. Emma's fingers found Echo's head, the familiar fur grounding her. Is Daddy out there? Front row? Sophie and her family next to him? Tyler and his mom? Dalton paused. Tyler's doing better. Still quiet. But he's talking now. Started about 6 months ago. First word was safe. Just that. Safe. His therapist says he's making real progress. Relief flooded Emma's chest. Tyler. Sweet, broken Tyler, who'd been locked in silence longer than she had. Who'd built walls so high even professional help could barely scale them. But he was talking now. He was healing. They were all healing. Slowly. Painfully. But healing nonetheless. Sophie had healed fastest. The 8-year-old who'd held a gun on their captor was now 13, thriving in school, captain of her soccer team. She visited Emma once a month, and they'd talk about normal things, boys and homework and stupid TikTok trends, but also about the warehouse, about the nightmares that still came sometimes, about the way certain smells, cigarettes, dog food, concrete could send them spiraling. They carried their trauma differently, but they carried it together. 5 minutes, a stagehand called. Emma took a breath. Behind her, Ethan appeared, looking uncomfortable in his dress uniform. He'd been promoted to sheriff last year when Dalton retired, the youngest sheriff in Montana history at 33. The promotion came with more responsibility, more hours, more weight, but also enough salary that Emma's college fund was growing steadily, and the house Sarah had loved was fully theirs. No mortgage, no debt, just home. Hey, baby. Ethan crouched beside her, and she was struck by how their heights were equalizing. She'd grown 5 inches in 5 years. Soon she'd be looking him in the eye. You feeling okay? We can still back out. We can... Daddy, stop. I'm okay. I promise. She hugged him, breathing in his familiar scent coffee and aftershave, and the faint smell of Echo's fur that never quite left his clothes. This is good. This is right. This is what Mama would want. Your Mama would want you happy and safe, not standing in front of hundreds of people reliving trauma. I'm not reliving trauma. I'm transforming it. There's a difference. Emma pulled back, met his eyes. Doctor, Warren says trauma only has the power we give it. If we hide it, it grows in the dark. If we speak it, shine light on it, it becomes something else. Maybe not good, but useful, educational, maybe even beautiful in a weird, broken glass kind of way. Ethan smiled despite himself. When did you get so wise? I had a really good teacher. She's dead now. But she left me all her lessons. His eyes filled with tears he didn't bother hiding anymore. 5 years of therapy for both of them had taught him that tears weren't weakness. They were just love with nowhere else to go. She did. And you've learned them all perfectly. The stagehand reappeared. 2 minutes. Ms. Brooks. You're on after the governor's introduction and the award presentation. Emma nodded, straightened her dress, checked that the paper was still in her pocket, though she'd memorized every word. Echo and Hope would walk out with her. They were part of the story. After all, the beginning and the continuation, and the proof that loyalty and love could survive anything, even death. Governor Robert Chen, no relation to Sophie. Though he'd made a point of meeting her family during his campaign, stepped to the podium. The crowd settled, 347 people holding their collective breath. 5 years ago today, the governor began, his voice carrying through the rotunda. A deputy sheriff driving through a blizzard heard his daughter speak for the first time in 10 months. Those first words led to the rescue of 3 children, the exposure of a trafficking ring responsible for kidnapping 15 minors, and the unraveling of a conspiracy that included murder, corruption, and the kind of evil we prefer to believe doesn't exist in our communities. He paused, letting the weight of that sink in. Today, we honor the heroes of that December night. Deputy Sheriff Ethan Brooks, now Sheriff Brooks, who risked his life to save children he'd never met. Echo, a military K-9 who refused to abandon Hope even when tortured and caged. Hope herself, who survived against impossible odds and grew into a search and rescue dog who saved 6 lives. And Emma Brooks, who at 7 years old found her voice and used it to save not just herself but countless others. The crowd applauded. Emma could see them now through the gap in the curtain, so many faces, some crying, some smiling, all present because 5 years ago someone had chosen to stop, to help, to care. The Governor's Heroism Medal is Montana's highest civilian honor, Governor Chen continued. It's reserved for acts of extraordinary courage, for people who embody the best of what we can be. Today, it is my profound privilege to present this medal to Emma Brooks, whose courage in the face of unimaginable trauma has inspired a generation. Emma walked onto the stage. The applause was deafening, overwhelming, a wave of sound that nearly made her stumble. But Echo was beside her, solid and warm, and Hope was on her other side. And somewhere in the front row, Daddy was watching with that expression he got when he was proud but trying not to cry. And that was enough. That was everything. Governor Chen placed the medal around her neck, heavy, bronze, engraved with her name and the date and the words, "For extraordinary courage and service to the people of Montana." She touched it, felt its weight, and thought about how much heavier the things we can't see are. Trauma, grief, loss. Those had no medals, no ceremonies. They just existed. Pressing down on your chest at 3 a.m. when the nightmares came. "Emma," the governor said, Would you like to say a few words? She stepped to the microphone, pulled out her paper, then folded it and put it back in her pocket. The words were in her heart. She didn't need them written down. 5 years ago, I couldn't walk or talk, she began. Her voice echoed in the rotunda, clearer and stronger than she'd expected. I'd watched my mama die. I'd lost everything I thought made life worth living. I wanted to disappear. Some days, I wanted to die. Uncomfortable shifting in the audience. People didn't like hearing that children contemplated death. But Emma had promised herself she'd tell the truth, and truth wasn't always comfortable. But then Echo found me. Not found, showed up desperate and bleeding and begging for help. And even though I couldn't walk, even though I couldn't speak, I could still choose. I could choose to ignore her, to let Daddy drive past, to protect myself from more pain. Or I could choose to help. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Mom always said that being human means having the choice to look away or look closer. Most people look away. It's easier. It's safer. It doesn't cost you anything. But Mama taught me that the price of looking away is your soul. Little pieces of it, every time. Until one day you look in the mirror and you don't recognize the person looking back. Emma's eyes found Sophie in the crowd, then Tyler, sitting very still beside his mother, then the parents of the other recovered children, scattered throughout the audience. When Echo showed up, I chose to look closer, and that choice saved my life. Not because we rescued children, though we did, not because we stopped bad guys, though we did that too, but because looking closer, helping someone else, it reminded me that I wasn't just a broken thing in a wheelchair. I was still human, still capable of love and courage and choice. She touched the medal. This award isn't for being a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who chose to not look away. And that's what I want everyone here to understand. You don't have to be special to make a difference. You don't have to be strong or brave or perfect. You just have to choose to show up, to see suffering and not walk past it, to hear someone crying for help and not turn up your radio. Tears were streaming down faces in the audience now. Emma could see Daddy crying openly, Sophie crying, even Sheriff Dalton wiping his eyes. Mrs. Dorothy, the woman who killed my mama, she looked away. She heard Mama screaming, and she walked away because she was scared, because she was poor and desperate, and she thought her life was worth more than my mama's. She was wrong. No life is worth more than another. No fear is worth letting someone burn. Emma's voice grew stronger. But here's what I learned: Dorothy didn't become evil in that one moment. She became evil over a lifetime of small choices. Every time she looked away from suffering, every time she chose comfort over courage, every time she decided that someone else's pain wasn't her problem, those choices built up, layer by layer, until the day came when the biggest choice of her life felt inevitable. Of course she walked away. That's what she'd been practicing her whole life. The rotunda was silent except for muffled sobs. So, if you want to honor me, if you want this medal to mean something, here's what I ask. Practice showing up. Practice looking closer. Practice choosing courage, especially when it's hard. Because I promise you, a day will come when someone's life depends on whether you've been practicing. And on that day, you'll either be ready or you'll walk away. And you'll have to live with that choice forever." Emma looked directly at the cameras, at the press who'd broadcast this across 6 states. "My mama died because someone walked away. But Sophie and Tyler and all those other children lived because my daddy and I showed up. That's the difference between tragedy and miracle. Someone has to show up. Let it be you. Always let it be you." She stepped back from the microphone. The applause started slowly, then built into something like thunder, like a storm of hands and hope and promise. People were standing, tears streaming, moved by the simple truth that a 12-year-old girl had learned the hard way: love is a choice, and courage is a practice, and heroism is just showing up when everyone else walks away. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Emma shook hands until her arm ached, accepted congratulations from strangers, posed for photos with Echo and Hope. But what she'd remember most was Tyler approaching her, his mother's hand on his shoulder for support, and saying in a voice still hoarse from years of disuse, "Thank you for showing up for us." "Always," Emma had replied. "Always for us." The evening ended at Sarah's grave. It had become tradition every December 23rd, the anniversary of the warehouse. They'd visit her, Ethan, Emma, Echo, and Hope. They'd stand in the cold and the snow and talk to the woman who'd given them everything. Emma placed fresh flowers on the headstone lilies, Sarah's favorite. "Hi, Mama. It's me. I got an award today. Governor's medal. Pretty cool." "Huh." She touched the bronze hanging around her neck. "I said some things. About you. About how you taught me to show up, to not look away. I hope I got it right. I hope I made you proud." Ethan stood beside her, one hand on Emma's shoulder, one hand on the cold granite. "She's doing amazing things, Sarah. Our girl. She's strong like you, brave like you. She speaks up when she sees wrong, just like you did. And she's going to be a veterinarian, going to save animals the way you did, going to carry on your legacy." Emma leaned against her father. "Do you think she can see us? Really see us? Or is heaven just, I don't know, somewhere else that doesn't touch here?" "I think," Ethan said slowly, "that love doesn't end. It just changes form. Your mama's love became Echo's loyalty, became Hope's courage, became your voice when you thought you'd lost it forever, became my strength when I wanted to give up. She's not gone, Emma. She's just differently here." Echo laid down at the base of the gravestone, as she always did. Hope curled beside her. 2 dogs keeping vigil for a woman they'd never met, but whose death had brought them to the people they loved most. It was grief and gratitude tangled together, too complex to untangle, too true to deny. "Mama," Emma said quietly, "I'm okay. Really okay. Not just surviving, living. I run now. I dance. I have friends and dreams and a future. I still miss you every single day. Still wish you were here to see who I'm becoming. But I understand now what you tried to teach me. Love isn't just feeling. It's action. It's showing up. It's choosing someone else's life over your own comfort, over your own safety, over your own life. She wiped her eyes. You showed up for me, for those dogs, for what was right. And it cost you everything. But it also gave me everything. Because you taught me how to be human, how to be brave, how to love so big it transcends death. Ethan pulled her close. We should go. It's getting cold. One more minute. They stood in the falling snow, this makeshift family of humans and dogs, broken pieces that had fused together into something stronger than any of them had been alone. The medal around Emma's neck caught the moonlight, a reminder that courage could be recognized, honored, celebrated. But the real medal was invisible, the daily choice to show up, to love, to care, to fight for good, even when evil seemed overwhelming. Good night, Mama, Emma whispered. I love you. All the way to the moon. As they walked away, Echo looked back at the grave once more. Then she followed Emma, as she always did, as she always would. Hope bounded ahead, young and strong, carrying Sarah's legacy in her DNA and her purpose. Ethan held Emma's hand, this daughter who'd taught him that the end of one life could be the beginning of many others. Behind them, Sarah's gravestone stood quiet in the snow. But if you listened, really listened, you could hear something. Not words, not even sound. Just the echo of a mother's love, rippling forward through time, touching everything, healing everything, transforming everything it touched. Some heroes wear badges, some wear fur, and some, like Sarah Brooks, wear eternity their love so powerful it refuses to die. It only transforms, spreading through their children and their choices and their legacy until the whole world is different because one person chose not to look away. Emma looked back once more and could have sworn she saw something, a shimmer in the falling snow, a warmth in the cold air, her mother's presence wrapped around her like an invisible embrace. She smiled. I see you, Mama. I see you. And somewhere, somehow, Sarah smiled back, because love doesn't end. It never ends. It just keeps showing up in 1,000 different forms, in 1,000,000 different moments, in every choice to be brave, to be kind, to be the person who doesn't walk away. That was the miracle. That was the message. That was the truth Emma would carry for the rest of her life. The truth she'd teach to her own children someday. The truth that Sarah had died to protect in a world full of darkness. The greatest rebellion is to be light, to show up, to love, to save someone, even if it costs you everything, because in the end, that's all we are. That's all we've ever been. Not victims or heroes or statistics or stories, just humans. Choosing moment by moment whether to look away or look closer, whether to walk past suffering or stop and help, whether to let someone hang alone in the cold or climb the tree. Cut the wire and say, I've got you. You're not alone. I'm here. Emma had learned that lesson at 7. At 12, she was teaching it to the world. And by the time she was grown, by the time she was a veterinarian saving animals her mother never got to save, By the time she was a mother herself, telling her daughter about a grandmother who'd loved so fiercely she'd died for it, that lesson would have traveled far. Show up. Look closer. Choose love. Every time. Especially when it's hard. Especially when it costs everything. Because some prices are worth paying. Some sacrifices transform into salvation. And some endings are really just beginnings wearing a disguise. That was Sarah's gift. That was Emma's inheritance. That was the story that began with a puppy hanging in desperation and a mother dog who refused to give up, and ended with a world just a little bit braver, a little bit kinder, a little bit more willing to stop when someone needs help. Because in the end, that's all it takes to save the world. One person, one choice, one moment of courage, one refusal to look away. Emma had made that choice at 7. She'd keep making it at 12, at 20, at 50, at 80. She'd make it until the day she died. And then, like her mother, her choice would live on in everyone she'd touched, everyone she'd taught, everyone who'd heard her story and decided that they, too, would be the person who shows up. That was the legacy. That was the love. That was the truth that would never die, passed down through generations like a sacred flame. We save each other. That's what we're here for. We save each other. Or we're nothing at all. And on that cold December night, 5 years after everything changed, Emma Brooks walked away from her mother's grave carrying that truth in her heart, ready to spend the rest of her life proving it true. One person at a time, one choice at a time, one act of courage at a time, until the whole world knew love doesn't end when someone dies. It just finds new voices, new hands, new hearts willing to carry it forward, and Emma would carry it forward for her mother, for herself, for every child who'd ever been caged, every person who'd ever been abandoned, every creature who'd ever hung alone in the cold waiting for someone, anyone to show up. She would show up. Always. That was her promise. That was her purpose. That was her mother's final gift, unwrapped over 5 years of healing, finally understood on this night of medals and memory and snow. Show up, be brave, save them, and never, ever walk away. To everyone who's lived long enough to know that life gives more than it takes away, this story is for you. If you've ever watched your children grow and wondered if you taught them enough about courage, if you've ever buried someone you loved and questioned whether their sacrifice meant anything, if you've ever felt invisible in a world that celebrates youth while forgetting that wisdom comes from weathered hands and broken hearts, mended 1,000 times, Emma's journey is your answer. At 55, 60, 70, you understand what younger generations are just learning, that showing up matters more than being perfect. That one moment of courage can echo through decades. That the love we give outlives us in ways we'll never see, but always hope for. Sarah Brooks died saving her daughter. And 5 years later, that daughter stood before hundreds, teaching the world what you already know. Legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's who we inspire to carry forward. Your grandchildren need to hear this story. Your neighbors struggling with medical bills and impossible choices need to remember that Dorothy's path isn't inevitable. You need to remember that every time you chose right over easy, someone's life changed. You mattered. You still matter. What moment in your life did you choose to show up when walking away would have been easier? What lesson do you hope your grandchildren inherit from your choices? Please share your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.